Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hey you guys, welcome back to this week's episode on Revamped. We are back today to discuss Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 2, Episode 9, What's My Line, Part 1. This episode originally aired on November 17th, 1997, written by Howard Gordon and Marty Noxon. And I want to say this is Marty Noxon's very first episode joining the show, and she's somebody that will go through the end of the series with us as well. But it was directed by David Solomon. This week, exciting things happening on the Hellmouth. After discovering how to cure Drusilla and bring her back to full power, Spike summons the mystical assassins known as the Order of Ță'ăracă to eliminate Buffy while he gathers items for their ritual. Following several attacks from the bounty hunters, Buffy finds herself in a fierce battle against a woman who may or may not be part of the Order. Who is she? Who is she? Guest cast, we have Bianca Lawson as Kendra. And I most know her from the movie Step Up. I used to watch that back in the day, little dance movie.
I was gonna say she looks so familiar. She's been in several things.
For sure. There's not a lot of things I've seen her in, but other than Step Up, she played Maya St. Germain, a gay character in Pretty Little Liars. She was Emily's love interest. She went like
that's exactly
missing and stuff, and I think they found out at the end of the second season that she was dead. Spoiler for anybody that's never seen Pretty Little Liars. You're not missing much, and if you do ever watch that show, do not watch past season 5.
Agreed.
But our other guest cast are Xavier Guerra as Willie the Snitch. We've got good old Willie. We loved him this episode, except we didn't. Kelly Connell as Norman Feister, and Eric Saet as Dalton. And I was feeling bad for poor Dalton this episode. He was getting the brunt of everything. I'll talk about him later. Yeah, opening thoughts. So what did you think initially? We did watch them back to back because I couldn't leave you on a cliffhanger and wait till next week. Plus the convenience of us being together for just the short period, we might as well knock them both out. But yeah, what were your thoughts?
Okay, so this episode was super interesting to me because I feel like we were obviously alluded to believe for the entirety of the episode that Kendra was part of Spike's
The Order of Ță'ăracă.
whatever. Yes, thank
Bounty
you.
hunters.
And yeah, and so it wasn't really clear at first what her purpose was, other than that is what we were left to assume. So the fact that things were kind of left off with this reveal of another vampire slayer, and I don't know about other viewers as first time viewers or watchers. I did not pick up on the reasoning for why there was a second one. So initially I thought maybe she was lying, or there were so many different things, but I love the element of mystery behind basically the entire episode. You come to find out as far as Kendra is concerned. But as far as all the action is concerned, I was really, really here for this episode. And I feel like my hatred toward Drusilla and Spike definitely increases here a lot more. Not that they haven't been like annoying, but in this episode, annoying moves into full on, like, I just straight up am ready to be done with them and for them to die. So, what about you, mate?
Spike and Drusilla hate. I feel like I'd be looking at Drusilla a little different these days because of obvious reasons, but I like their tie-ins from this, and it's not done here. Obviously, we've seen part 2 as well, so we'll get into that next week. And we'll probably, just for anybody watching, if you haven't seen part 2, or if you want to kind of watch both episodes and then come back and listen to the podcast, we might allude to some things that happen in part 2 along our journey of part 1, just because it makes sense to tie it all together without giving too much away.
But, obviously this is our first Spike and Drusilla like big clash moment where they kind of come in doing more so than they have been so far. It's just been about Spike having those elements of trying to, on his own, defeat the Slayer. In this episode, they actually orchestrate a bigger problem for Buffy and along their journey of trying to find something for themselves. It's like all in order to aid them. They start to resource different things. But this time I realized around the watch with myself and just with you that I kind of like part 2 more. Like I always be like, oh, I love What's My Line. But part 1 is really about setting up the story for us as much as like part 2 really has all the action, the fights, the sequences, and the like everything that's boiling and coming up to a head happens that episode. One thing I did really notice is that once again, we're back here living with Buffy through her internal struggles with being the Slayer versus normalcy more than anything, because of the fact that, the school function being career week is here this week, a whole week of What's My Line, only Buffy doesn't get to play her words. We're also basically being breadcrumbed in that setup of story with our minor characters and dynamics between them and new possibility, like the new possibility between like in part 2, we see the dynamic open up between Willow and Oz a little more. We see the dynamic between Cordelia and Xander open up a little bit more. And this one, we get a little bit more of an expansion on Buffy and Angel versus where they were in Lie to Me, Buffy's not on reserve about Angel the same way anymore. She's back feeling emotionally connected to him. And now I think this is one of the first things where we notice Buffy and Angel, they're not so much of just like star-crossed lovers as they've been beforehand. Like they're actually heavily more involved in a relationship right now. Like these are the first indicators of it. Beforehand, it's a bunch of like, should we, shouldn't we? And now I feel like she's like actually acknowledging since Lie to Me. And because I mean, if you think about what she said to Ford when he's like, is that your boyfriend? She's like, yes, maybe, sort of. Like, you know what I mean? She didn't really have a clear answer. And I feel like now if people were like, is that your boyfriend? She'd be like, yes, Angel's my boyfriend. Do you get what I'm saying? Took a while for that to come out. But yeah, their relationship hits its peaks in this way. And I like the fact that Spike is tired of getting his ass handed to him and decides to call in the big guns, as he says, aka the Order of Bounty Hunters, to, if anything, keep Buffy busy while they put the pieces to their puzzle together on how to cure Drusilla, which is our main focus for the next 2 episodes, is trying to alleviate whatever troubles that Drusilla's been having since she got fucked up by that angry mob. So now it's not just Spike and Drew and other vampires to worry about. We have this whole faction of villains to contend with as well. So it puts a lot more on the table. It's not just Buffy dealing with classic vampires in the town or like Spike's followers and stuff. Now he's ordered this full army of assassins to come after this bitch as well. And then finally, honestly, the cherry on top, at the very end, we get the big reveal on the cliffhanger that we have another Slayer, or that we might have another Slayer, Kendra. And on original run, the episodes were spaced a week apart versus airing together. So people were probably just left in this situation. Like you said, you didn't know how they would have probably paid attention to it then. They were left on like not fed any answers. Back in the day when they did that, you got to wait till next week's episode to figure out what's going on. You got to like have that suspension of time. Whereas we, nowadays get to binge watch it. I myself, I was watching it like on FX on reruns. So they played these 2 episodes back to back together. So the first time I ever really watched it, it wasn't through the live watch, because I didn't start doing that until like season 3 of Buffy was when I followed it on the WB for week by week episodes. And that was probably like mid season 3 at that. So I always knew what was happening. So I didn't have a moment to pause and be like, what the fuck? I had the episode end and to be continued, and then a commercial came on and I had like 3 minutes to digest this before I was like seeing the opening sequence to part 2 and all that. So but that's where I guess I kind of stand on just like opening thoughts of the episode and kind of what we're dealing with. Obviously we'll talk about a lot more as we go along and stuff, and I have some interesting stuff to say as we go along as well. But I guess we can go into it. We have no Giles Slayer prologue this time, because anytime there's a previously on Buffy, they ain't got time for Giles to be saying shit. So previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Spike and Drew take over the factory, arriving in Sunnydale. Buffy questions Angel and Drusilla's past after seeing them together. Angel informing that she's the worst thing that he did as a vampire, siring her. Drusilla is on the weak side of life, and Spike sent a vampire to steal a book from Giles in the library, which is delivered, and he knows it will be useful. Left us on those breadcrumbs. They're like, what's this book? He's like, it took one of my books. All right, well, episode begins. We got the career fair. It starts tomorrow in Sunnydale. We see a sign displayed as Willow passes under it. Very stoked looking, by the way. She's like, this is her element. She's like, all things immersed in school. I'm ready to find out what I could be, all that stuff. Like, Willow's always chipper about anytime like school has a cool function like this. She was doing the same shit whenever the science fair project was happening. All the bustling was happening.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
It's just really her element. But she signs in, and grabs her paperwork to take the vocational aptitude test. And I don't remember doing this in school. Like, we probably had to. I feel like everybody had to do it. They might not do it these days. I don't remember career fair things. I remember in high school people coming to set up booths to talk about
Like a job fair, so
that's
to
what it's
speak, but
called.
I don't think that they, like, gave you a test
Yeah,
and
to see
all
where
of
you would
that, you
place at.
know?
Like, I don't remember that at all. I'm like,
I feel like I would 100% remember that because I feel like I would take a test like that today, even in my
find out
30s,
what I
just
should
for
be.
it to tell me some shit that I probably don't know, because I didn't take a test like
We
that.
should go online after this at some point this week and see if there's an aptitude test that you can take online that says what you should be in life.
Want
Only time
to?
I've ever done that is whenever you're doing like your midhaven sign for your birth chart, and it says that you
Yes.
might align with these types of energies to become this
Mhm.
type of person.
One of mine literally said a massage therapist, and I was like,
I feel like mine
"What
said
the
something about like
fuck?"
culinary artist or a public speaker or some shit like that.
I've gotten public speaker before. I've gotten writer before, which obviously I was here with that one. And I've gotten massage therapist, and there was some random ass one that it was like some sort of engineer. And I was like,
Mm,
no, too much
ain't got no
school.
time for no engine. Either way, Willow grabs her stuff and moves over to a table that Xander and Buffy are already discussing and doing their questions for their aptitude test. Not really vibing with the whole ordeal, but Willow is once again stoked to see what kind of career she could have. Xander makes the comment about being young and stupid, and Willow clarifies that he won't be young forever. He's like, but I'll always be stupid though. Aw. At first, I was like, I'm not even going to bite at that one because it's too easy after Xander said that. But I was like, you're not really stupid, Xander. You help out a lot. And when you're not making jokes out of everything, you actually bring a good bit to the table and help get people's gears turning most of the time. I mean, he's the one that led Willow in last episode to the revelation of how to stop Igon. So he feeds out these little different things. He's always there turning
Oh,
up.
totally.
So I was like,
Yeah, well, and with Xander lately, I feel like his jokes are what I'm here for the most, because he lightens the mood at very appropriate times when it's needed. But I also am starting to feel like the show just would not be what it is without Xander's character, too. So there's a part of like where we probably dog on Xander a lot, but I do acknowledge that the show would kind of be missing a huge piece of something. If it wasn't for him. But yeah, he's growing on me, and I feel like I hate it when he self-loathes as much as we rag
mm-hmm,
on him. When he does it to himself, I'm like, Xander, please stop.
exactly.
Like, be easy on yourself.
And I hate it when anybody does that. That's why I was like, I'm gonna stand up for you right now, Xander, because no one. I hate when people be like, "Oh, I'm stupid" or "I'm dumb" or any of that type of stuff, because
Mhm.
usually it's not factual, and that's just feeding into somebody's insecurities about themselves.
Totally.
Anyway, I will say that I love Willow's little pigtail French braids that she's got going on, 'cause she wears them every now and again, and I think Willow looks the cutest and most innocent whenever she's got these. Neither of them say anything, and he's like, "Let's all not rush to disagree." And Buffy has his back though. She's like, "You're not stupid." Cordelia's walking around taking her test with two Cordettes that we've never seen before her, like listening to her check, yes to aspiring her for her fellow man and all the other things that she wants to like. She's like, unless he's not gross and all this other shit. Imagine being extras on this show and all you're doing is following around Charisma Carpenter's character and you have absolutely no lines. You're just supposed to be there as like backup as her posse. But I was like, where the fuck is Harmony? And I just noticed I googled it before we came in here because I was like, when did we see Harmony again? The last time we saw her was out of mind, out of sight. Whenever Marcy pushed her down the steps.
I was gonna
So we
say,
haven't
yeah.
seen her at all this season. And I looked it up and like we don't see her again until episode 16 this season. And it's the only episode she's in all of season 2.
She just
But
randomly pops up again.
I guess I was thinking in my head that she was more active in the show than she actually is. So
Maybe she been chilling with Mark.
I missed her energy in this because I would have been like, that would have been a funny little follow up for Harmony to be like, oh yeah, Cordelia, you're so right. Like jacking off to Cordelia.
Yeah.
Back to what I was saying about Cordelia, though, she concludes as long as he's not dirty, smelly, or something gross, passing by the gang's table as Xander comments on her helpful hand to the rich and pretty, which excludes him twice, she says. I was like, thank God for her, because, she's like, it's like another one of those moments when Xander's walking by in Reptile Boy, and she's like, I mean, look at that, whenever she's doing Dr. Debbie or whatever, his little questionnaire in the Cosmopolitan magazine. And he's
Yes.
like, oh, fuck. And we're all getting, like, just to put it out there now, because we've seen part 2, we're getting breadcrumb then as well with Cordelia and Xander's dynamic. Just to put that out there now, it was foreshadowing some of that stuff for her being so mean to him and being like, ugh, I would never touch that. I'm like, would you though?
Mm-hmm.
She walks off and he ponders the perception of murder always being a crime.
Is murder always a crime?
And I mean, obviously, we almost got him to attack her last episode because he was like, I said I'm snapping until Willow stepped in. Thank goodness, though. I wrote my notes. I was like, ooh, the tension between these two is still building. And I was like, can't wait for next week and its payoff. Willow and Buffy both come down on the side of pro shrubs. I have no clue what that means, but I guess that means they could be gardeners or they like plants. They're Meredith. And Buffy remarks how she shouldn't even be taking this shit because she already has a bustling and busy career, chosen one, yada, yada, yada. And then Xander's like, high risk, minimum wage. And Buffy's like,
Pointy wooden things.
I was like, good use of the pencil there, Buff. No surprise, though, Snyder has her taking this test. She cops a bad attitude with Willow over her destiny because Willow's like,
You're not even a teensy-weensy bit curious about what kind of career you could have had? I mean, if you weren't already a Slayer or not.
and she's like, do the words sealed in fate not mean anything to you, Willow? And then Willow's just like, shut up. And then Xander's like, you know, with that kind of attitude, you could have made a good employee at the DMV. Boy, ain't that the fucking truth, though? Because that kind of attitude is the key indicator that you're at the DMV. Anybody being negative and rude to you in life, you'd be like, am I at the DMV right now?
Yeah.
Like, you're just at a park chilling and someone's being rude to you and be like, this must be the DMV. Them
So
workers
true.
are the worst to interact with. Like, they all hate their lives. They always make you do all these damn things for some damn ID card picture, like this little thing that's got your name and fucking face on it. And they're like, ugh,
No, I totally get it. I think any like customer service job like that where people just have to deal with the most random influx of people all day long, like I can only imagine what those people got to deal with every day. It's probably no wonder they're in a bad mood.
exactly. Well, thankfully, she scales it back to say sorry and nicely clarifies her normal existence is a non-issue until the evil in the world disappears entirely, which will not be happening. And I was actually glad for Xander to make the comment that he did here, which gave Buffy the chance to kind of take back the negative vibes that were flowing and apologize and be more aware of her actions. I was like, I like that you called her out subtly because I appreciate when my friends do this to me. He did it with humor. He wasn't like, Buffy, you trying to act like he wasn't when she was bad right now? Like, what's happening? You know, he could have been more aggressive with it, but he was just like, hey, like almost like wagging a finger in a nice way to her. We flash over to the factory where Drusilla is over here doing what we love to see, a tarot card reading. I was like, come through, rider, wait, deck. Like, they have them cards, and I don't know if you noticed too, but them cards are like oversized as fuck. They're like a good like 8x8 card.
Listen, I have a deck just like
It's
that.
big
And
like
I was
that?
like, oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
I think I have it literally over here
Mine
somewhere.
are just like regular sized cards. I usually don't like bigger cards because I have smaller hands, so it's harder for me to shuffle them. I told you, I was like, look at the top two cards. It was the Hierophant and the Emperor, which is our zodiac tarot cards when it comes to Taurus and Aries. And I was like, look at us, mate. We are appearing in a Buffy episode officially. Spike at the other end of the table has his scholar lackey vampire Dalton trying to decipher the text in the book they stole from Giles. Ain't never seen a vampire wear glasses before, by the way, and Dalton's got like a pair of spectacles on. I was like, what's going on? He isn't translating very well also, and Spike offers him a backhand to help him get in check. Since D-Base, the beef, canoe, isn't striking him as correct terms that he's reading from this book. Drew wants to take a break from her tarot cards to dance, and Spike snaps at her because he hasn't the time, and her all whimpering again, looking sad, and every time he scolds her, she's like, I'm like, oh my God, this toxic ass relationship between these two. I was like, he always checks himself though, because he is right back to being affectionate with her 2 seconds later, saying he wants to help her gain her power back by figuring out this cure for her. He's sorry, he's just really frustrated and stressed right now, yada yada. She got to go change Miss Edith though. She starts hurtling over, being like, I gotta go away. I gotta go dress my dolly. But can't because she seems to be too frail to walk at this point as well. I noticed that like she's just like very weakened. Like it's almost like I'm like, is she gonna dust herself? Like just die as a vampire because she doesn't have her quote unquote strength? And like I don't know, this whole storyline for Drusilla doesn't kind of make sense to me sometimes because they're saying like she got beat up by an angry mob, and I'm like, they didn't do anything. They didn't stake her. And like just because you get beat to death, like she's a vampire, so she regenerates just like a Slayer would or anything else supernatural. They have like fast healing and things like that. I'm like, so what did they do to her that was so bad? Did they also curse her in a way to like, which they didn't? I'm just saying like, what exactly is going on with her? Because like
Yeah.
Spike's always telling her that she's too weak to do anything and all this other stuff, and she's obviously visibly looking weak as well. I'm just like, I really don't get the whole notion here. They're just trying to set it up for this whole story, like, or they have been with Drusilla this whole time. So I guess we're going with it. He helps her have a seat at the table and comments on how this bloody slayer is mucking up the works, always foiling everything he attempts. They share a kiss and he gets back over to Dalton to jack his shit up again because he's like, have you made any progress? And he hasn't, so he jacks Dalton the fuck up, ripping him out the chair. Spike screams at him to say that he wants this cure, punching him in the fucking gut. Drew calling out that he can't help him, looking down to her cards to say that there is a sort of key they need for helping them. The card showing a mausoleum and a dead man on it, being the space that they will find as such, because, you know, Spike comes over, he's like, this is the place where we find the key, the thing to will get you feeling better. And he is thrilled. She asks if he will dance with her now, and he picks her up in his arms, spinning around, saying,
I'll dance with you, Fate. On the Slayer's grave.
And then we end on them spinning and cue the Buffy theme. Yep.
Exactly.
Before we get back into it, I did want to pause here because of the tarology stuff that we got going on. And as a tarologist myself, and the fact that we're both fluid in reading tarot cards, I totally peeped through those cards to see if they provided any sort of accuracy. And in some ways, I saw that they did have themes that were present within the reading. So I figured it would be fun to dissect them a little bit. I've not seen the spread layout before because she has it almost set up like a Celtic cross spread where you usually have like the two cards crossing and then cards around it and then another line on the other side. That usually calls for 10 cards, but she didn't have that as such. I think she had like 8 cards out. So I don't know what kind of spread. I even Googled like 8 card spreads to see if anything kind of matched her stuff because that's not in my memory bank for spreads. But those two cards crossing each other typically stand for the situation or person, and then the challenge at crossing them, like what's going to be their challenge or affecting them in the situation, is the overlapping card. And the cards that were in this position were the 8 of Cups and the 2 of Swords. 2 of Swords being the one that was crossing, which would signify turning away and cutting losses after fueled efforts to find a new direction and learning from your experiences. Along with the 2 of Swords, that is deemed the blind faith card, usually depicting someone with indecision, someone that is stuck and not sure how to move forward. A need for intuition and mental focus is a need for being intertwined, hence like the blind faith on that card. So I already kind of saw that if she was like, these are my overall cards that represent me and my situation. And that kind of already made sense because they need to like cut losses after like they've been fueling efforts into trying to get rid of Buffy and trying to figure a cure for Drusilla and stuff. And now they need to like go in a new direction. So that totally made sense. So I'm like wondering who they had on set that like maybe knew about tarot cards a little bit to like put the, or if they just like laid them out and they like was like, we're just going to use these cards because they're tarot cards. You know what I mean?
Or I wonder if it had something to do with like the imagery on the card, and they were like, "This looks like it might
Exactly. I
be."
mean, and that's intuitive tarot reading right there. But I'm assuming that they
Yeah.
probably did a little bit of research or had somebody on board for this. This absolutely, though, does stand for the situation, as Buffy, like I said, has bested them time and time again, and they have come up at a standstill with how to bring Drew back to power, which is what this episode is all about. And their current situation is all about finding a new way to get what they need done. They've got the book from Giles and can't decipher it, so there's a missing piece. On the left of her spread, the 3 cards are the Hierophant, a figure of authority or power like the Emperor, but his power is of spiritual metaphysical power, guidance, knowledge, all of that stuff. We usually resource him out for like spiritual workings. Then the 8 of Swords underneath him, which depicts someone being entrapped, helpless, and stuck in a painful, weakened state. And then the final card being the 9 of Swords, which follows the 8 of Swords, which is the card of worry, stress, reaching deep within a crisis, and can typically indicate a vulnerable spot in life or a difficult path. You know, like up all night energy, worry, anxiety, all that type of stuff. This section on the card deck, I believe, represents the current state or not too far behind past that leads up to now, because I see these cards as reading from like the bottom up to the top personally. The way I chose to read her layout. I say this because the 9 is where she currently sits. Drusilla would appear to be the person that's in the 8 of Swords directly above that. She's the one that's trapped and like can't really see a way forward, much like the 2 of Swords, which also depicts a blindfolded person. Only the person in that card has created that state of being to gain insight and clarity. Like it's a self-imposed state. You put the blindfold on you so that way you can trust your like own clarity and your own intuition. That's why the swords are there for mental energy, which is usually like a card of confusion and all of that good stuff. But in the 8 of Swords, the blindfold is slipping off of the person's eyes, which shows that they can't escape their current state if we just apply ourselves and unrestrict ourselves from the zone that we're in. Over the top of those cards lies the Hierophant, which I believe to represent 𝒂𝒏𝒩, who was a religious leader who had the books of spells and rituals that wreaked unspeakable evil, as we will come to be made aware of later on in the episode. So this section sort of follows a bit of that direction. Now, the right-hand side of the spread shows the Emperor, the Two of Pentacles reversed, and the Three of Swords reversed. And I thought it was very specific that they chose to do these cards in the reverse position, because this is the part of the whole sequence that like makes the most sense to me. This side, I would say, shows the not so distant future, as the cards that usually are on the right hand of a spread usually show the final outcome of everything. The Emperor is another higher figure. He represents a need to take control, establishment, structure, and higher status, and he often has clear vision of his goals and is great at organizing a way to accomplish a task, especially if it involves battle, as he is ruled by Aries and the power of war and all of that type of insight. The Two of Pentacles reversed shows imbalance, excess struggles, and a need for reprioritization or reassessment and concentration, aligning very well with the Emperor. Then we finally have the Three of Swords reversed, which is a more positive vibe than when the card is found upright. It stands for making the most of an unhappy situation, positive shifts towards healing from a past pain, and a turning point in the healing process and hopeful perspective. This is often deemed as the on the path to recovery or a silver lining on clouds when it's turned in the reverse position, just because we know upright usually means sorrow, heartache, all that stuff. I talked about that in Lie to Me when I discussed the Three of Swords with Buffy's journey. Sort of blending the reading all together, though, these final cards, it shows the events of the rest of the episode and into part 2. Drusilla is aiming to become the Emperor, back in her fullest of power, strong and full of vitality, which also is what he represents, but it shows that they must organize a new way to accomplish these goals, which they do when they decide to steal 𝒂𝒏𝒩's cross, along with sending out the assassins after Buffy. The Two of Pentacles upright often shows us as we may be juggling too much, because it shows the person with the scales and like the 2 pentacles in the hands. That being in reverse shows them releasing some sort of weight that they have on them, and sending the order is a way to release some of the burden of them having to do everything, especially when it comes to their Slayer troubles. The final card points to the final outcome of part 2, which we will rediscuss at the end of part 2, but it truly does sit in the position of the final outcome if you take into account what I mentioned the reversal of this card means. It's exactly what happens, but for now we will say it's giving hope to their situation and her need to be restored. So I think they did a good job with the tarot reading in general. Interesting that the cards really did tell a story. They didn't have it set up right. And I do want to point out too, because I said it to you, but the other cards along in the episode, like the man with the tomb that they say they'll find the cross there, that's not a real tarot card. They took a few elements from other tarot cards and made a card to do like this. The only other card that we see that's a legit tarot card is the Devil card, which is the one that's in place for the bounty hunter that has the foggy eye. The one with the worm on it and the cheetah behind the bush are not actual tarot cards, nor is the Fallen Angel one that they have that represents Angel later in the episode as well. So I was like, they just did that for plot convenience, and they made it make sense because it's within the episode.
Yes.
And those cards could totally exist if somebody created that as the imagery on it, but they had no numbers on it or anything like that. I was just they're just trying to say it's here, I'm reading it in the cards because I'm a psychic, because I'm Drusilla. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like it was a missed merch opportunity for the Buffy verse, because in my opinion, if I were them, I would have printed off a very official Buffy tarot deck and had those randomly placed cards in there as actual cards and named them something that was relative obviously to what they were supposed to be in the episode,
Yeah.
But I'm because there's a tarot deck that is Buffy themed. I wish they would have just randomly thrown those
Somewhere.
2 or 3 whatever cards.
Right.
Yeah, just to be funny, because then you'd be oh shit, I remember this.
Well, fading back in from the Buffy theme, we find Buffy's on patrol in the graveyard that night, and boy, could she have not chosen the better night and location to be, as we hear some chiseling sounds coming from inside of a tomb. She takes notice to it moving over there, and I love the music here. It's simple. It's similar to those spooky type stuff that we've had in the past, like in Welcome to the Hellmouth. You know what I mean? It's backed by some suspense. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark, to be honest. She cracks the door open and peeks inside to see Dalton removing something from one of the grave walls, and we get that iconic shot that's in the Buffy themed titles for a good chunk of moving forward. She slowly closes the door and turns to go take a stance outside and just wait for this motherfucker to exit. And I love it because she just folds her arms and posts up standing there. When he exits, she immediately makes her presence known to say,
Does rest in peace have no sanctity to you people? Oh, I forgot. They're not a people.
Dalton looking rather alarmed. But another vampire has come up behind Buffy to attack her, but our Slayer is on her game. She turns around immediately and kicks that motherfucker. She gets into a fight with him, and it takes her all of 2 seconds for us to get the 2K/Slay as she dusts his motherfucking ass. And I was like, yes, Buffy, come through. And we even get that little cool practical effect of some of the dust sifts onto the water and the fountain that's behind her. Really, really cool little placement there, a little additive. She comments, one down, turning back to where Dalton was, and now one gone because he has escaped. That would totally be me waiting for the vampire to come out, like going back out and being like, I'm going to catch you in the act. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have just, because she could have had the option of just being like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Like through the door. And he would have been like, he would have been just as spooked and alarmed. He would have like, fuck the Slayer. But she chose to shut that door back and go stand out there and post up waiting for him so she could be like, you're in some deep doo-doo. And he would have been like, that vampire. Like, I was wondering though, because like obviously he has that backup vampire, and I was like, thankfully he was out scouting somewhere just in case something happened to like keep him. I don't know, he was supposed to be standing guard, and I guess he took a break for a second because he wasn't out there to see Buffy lingering. You know,
I know.
Whatever. I love Buffy for that moment. In Buffy's room, we see Angel standing in there alone, pacing and looking at Buffy's belongings. Her head pops in her open window, the one she clearly snuck out of to go patrol. Seeing him in there, she gets a cute smirk on her face and then throws her bag in, and he turns around getting startled from it. Now he knows what it feels like, she says, and she makes a joke about him stopping by for some quality time with Mr. Gordo, her stuffed pig she's holding, because he's like, what? And she's like, the pig. This prop was actually a little replica that they made and they sold on Factory X, just like the cross that I have and like some of the other elements we'll see in the show. It was like a big thing back in the day, and you can still find them on eBay for like a pretty fucking penny, just to say. But I had forgotten about Mr. Gordo because we only see him a little bit during the series and stuff like that. Obviously more in these years. You don't see it in season 7 when she's a full ass adult. She ain't playing with that piggy no more. Spoiler. Mr. Gordo is the one who defeats the final big bad. Anyways, she wonders why he's there because he's got the something phase, and he doesn't have to keep his voice low because dear old Joyce is out of town on work business yet again. This is like several episodes now. She wasn't home on Halloween. She like always is out and about dealing art, whatever she does in fucking Los Angeles, you know,
Dealing drugs.
yep, and selling her artwork for her weed addiction. He's like, then why'd you come in through the window though? And she's like puzzled for a second. She's like, oh fuck, man, habit. She's like, I do that out of habit. And I just realized I could have came through the front door because I didn't have to sneak out tonight because my mom's not even damn here. And I was like, you clearly have to do this every single night. I also noticed in this scene too that whenever Angel, before he spooks her, he's facing her dresser, and right behind him when he does turn around and starts talking to Buffy, there's a Los Angeles poster that's on the background. And we know Buffy's dad lives in LA, and she probably got that poster from that. But I was like, ooh, this is a little foreshadow moment. And I'm like, if you know, you know, and everybody else knows, and you sort of know, but you don't know. He apparently had a bad feeling and wanted to check in on her being a little smart ass about his bad vibes that are flowing, but she's the one with the non-positive vibes flowing because Joyce took them all with her. And she's been little cranky miss all day, she says. Checking herself again because he almost turns to leave, clarifying it's not him. Then she tells him about career week shit at school, but he lurks, so he is aware. Then he should also know it's a whole week of What's My Line, only Buffy doesn't get to play. Episode title drop right there. Love when they do this. Her getting bummed sitting on her bed beside Angel, stating sometimes she just wants, looking over to the mirror, and we see she's sitting by herself on her bed even though Angel's beside her because, you know, he doesn't reflect in it. And I was like, that's a really cool thing, literally mirroring the opposite life that she has from the normal one she's speaking on in this moment as well. Also having to clarify this doesn't mean before Angel, as she says,
no, Angel, it's not you. You're the one freaky thing in my freaky world that still makes sense to me.
Perhaps it would be great if they could just be regular kids, but that's never in the cards for him, he states. She makes this okay by saying,
okay then, a regular kid and her cradle-robbing creature of the night boyfriend.
I like this because it makes him laugh, and he gets up and grabs a photo of her as a kid, her Dorothy Hamill ice skater phase, she calls it. She's like, oh hell. I was like, well, you got this on your cabinet, so like, did you not expect anybody to see this? And she's
I
embarrassed, and
know.
also telling him of some of her fun obsessed past, saying that she used to love ice skating, using it as an escape from her parents' problems with one another, bringing them to the actual vibes of a date as he suggests an ice rink he knows is closed on Tuesdays. And Buffy's like, tomorrow's Tuesday. She's like, are you saying you want to go on a date? And he's like, well, I haven't been channeling the go get coffee vibes that I promised you at the end of like Reptile Boy or whatever it was. So but I love the whole exchange because, like I said, when Angel grows saddened by the facts of like him never being a normal kid, Buffy snaps him right back out of it when she makes a joke and actually makes him smile, and it shifts the vibes.
Mhm.
Because there was like 2 times he looked like he wanted to leave that damn room, and I'm like, oop. And I like now that he's actually going to take her on the date, or like because we see the date later on, even though it's ruined. I think it's nice that they actually kind of have their first date this episode.
I agree.
The next day, Cordy and Xander are seen in the courtyard at a bulletin board reading off their posted career field results. Cordelia got personal shopper and motivational speaker. Xander finds this exceptionally funny because that's all she does is annoy people, aka him. And she flips to his and just laughs at his and walks off. She's like, what about you? And she's like, ha, leaving him to read it for himself as we cut over to see Willow and Buffy walking gal palling and discussing the date her and Angel are going on tonight, unless some unforeseen evil pops up, that is. And I'm like, you had to go and jinx it. Do y'all not remember y'all's quote whenever, what is it, School Hard, when they're like scolding Xander for saying some shit like this, and now they out here saying it themselves? I'm like, well, you called it, Buffy. Buffy fashion watch moment, because I love this fit. Short skirts and the knee-high boots, and she's got them on here. But also, like, once again, this is kind of like, I think it was in Out of Mind, Out of Sight. She was wearing the black and the nudes together, and she's even got the choker on and the whole fuzzy cheetah bag again. I'm like, we love this Buffy fit.
It's a
I
good
want to wear it.
look.
She looks hot here, and I like her hair blowout and all the things. All the things. Xander meets up with them to dish about his results, asking if when they look at him, do they think prison guard? They both laugh, and he is confused why correctional facility is his future. And Buffy makes a joke about him being on the right side of the bars. And he claps back that apparently she will be working alongside him as her results landed her in the field of polyester, donuts, and police brutality, aka police. I added the part about police brutality because, police are pieces of shit half the time. Sorry if anybody's a cop listens to this podcast. You're probably good, because if you're listening to Buffy, you got the right vibes.
AKA the
I
positive
mean, I'm just saying, there ain't been no times that I've ever been pulled over by a cop, which is all of one time, or had to interact with a cop where I felt like safe and protected and all that other stuff that they're supposed to stand for. They're usually dicks to me.
Really?
I think I've had one positive interaction with a cop. I got pulled over at a stop sign, or for running a stop sign in a apartment complex back a couple of months ago, and he was like, you must not be from around here. And I was like, from where? He's like, America, we stop at red stop signs. And I was like, oh.
Oh,
I was like, did
shit.
that really have to be your first interaction? And you wonder why people are half the time hostile with cops? Like, you could
Oh
have said,
my
sir, you
God. That's just so
exactly. And
unnecessary.
I said that to him.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I actually probably would have chose different words to say that, but you're not wrong. I can definitely take accountability for something I did. I said, but also, you see that big ass tree that's in front of that stop sign that needs its limbs clipped? That's why I didn't see it. I said, it's
Mhm.
also 11 p.m. at night. So, if you want to go get your buck saw from your house that I'm sure you have and come down here and cut the limbs down, then we can have some positive enforcement back in our life with, stop signs. And I'm leaving all that shit in because now you can see why I have disdain a little bit for some police officers.
No, I get it.
Buffy gives a displeased, and Willow tries to make it better with, but hey, donuts. And then she gives an even greater, gotta watch that Slayer figure. And I hate this connotation though, like with donuts and like food and like saying girls are supposed to only eat a certain thing. 'Cause that's totally what Buffy's kind of doing here, is being like, no, I'll get fat from eating donuts, or like it's bad, it's like
Totally.
unhealthy and all
Yeah.
that. I'm like, you can be health
Because
conscious.
I'm like, that's the only reason why the job would be worth it.
They get them for us every Friday at the Winchester, and I always skip eating one because that ain't trying to be my breakfast. I'm trying to have my strawberries and pineapple or something. A bagel. She will have to cross that bridge, though, when she gets to it, as we see Giles carrying a shit ton of books near them and making his way to the library, her saying he has her hella focused on the sleigh gig, and she has to check in with him more often nowadays, which she heads off to go follow after him. Willow taking the time to quickly ask Xander what her results said, but he states that she wasn't on the list. But why? How?
But I handed in my test. I used a number 2 pencil.
And then he goes, well, you must have passed. And she's like, well, it's not the kind of test you pass or fail. And he's like, well, it was just simply not there. Little moment to speak on it though. Do you feel everyone's career chosen for them kind of matches up this episode?
100%. Other than I feel like Xander's didn't fully like I get it, I could see that. But I don't know. I feel like they could have done a little bit better. And I don't know what I would have put in place of that. But I don't look, I thought what Buffy said was funny when she was like, I can see crossing guard. I'm like, he does kind of look like
The show writers had to be like, what would fit these people if we had to give them
hmm
something? And it totally does fit. But Prophecy Girls podcast once said along their journey, I think probably around this episode, that they think Buffy should be like a personal trainer. And I feel like I would have to agree with that because she has great strength and endurance and a well of knowledge forming in that
Totally.
aspect. I think that like a martial arts instructor, like maybe a jujitsu trainer or something, would also be a good vibe for her versus like law enforcement, because Laud knows the last thing that she needs to be saddled with more serve and protect kind of shit, And especially with Buffy's smart ass nature. Buffy be that cop being like, we don't run stop signs in America.
Yeah, you are right. I guess I see why they tied it in the way they did because, like you just said, it's a matter of like protect and serve if we're talking about cops who
Uh-huh.
actually do it the
Yeah.
right way. But yeah, so I get it, but it just kind of sucks because it almost like solidifies that more for her and reaffirms the one thing that she is like in a matter of avoidance with right now, where she's like, I don't basically want to hear any more about this theme. Like it could have been probably any other
Mhm.
job and she would have had it more well received, I think.
On Xander's part, I really didn't guess that that would be his chosen field. To me, it makes more sense for him to be placed in like a lower blue collar job, following in the footsteps surely of his father, aka working like a minimum wage job, aka the ice cream or pizza shop that Willow's often talked about for him. Because like that seems like what he would do. He'd be like the McDonald's worker, like for minimum wage, like that type of stuff.
I could almost see Xander being like a teacher, because he's like, I could see him being one of those like guys who's still trying to cut jokes and be
Mm-hmm.
funny, but do it from like a way that's only relevant to him. But you see like so many teachers do that where they try to be like cool and cut
Mm-hmm.
jokes with the students, and everyone's just sitting there like, no. I could see him
That's it.
doing that. And because he thinks like he knows stuff about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So if he went and was a teacher about one topic, that was like the one thing he thought he knew better than anyone. I feel like I could totally see
Oh,
that.
that's interesting. That's a perspective I wouldn't have come up with. And like I said, we haven't revealed Willow's, but it's coming, and that line of work really does make sense for her, like software development, aka computer work. I
Mhm.
feel like that's pretty sensible, but I also could see Willow being an instructor or teacher in general, that on that route of teaching and stuff. Like Willow definitely needs to be like a college university professor because she's very smart.
Yeah. I almost thought like that it was gonna be like something so top notch like the CIA. Like they were gonna hire
Yeah,
her to be like a hacker for the CIA or something, I was
probably so.
like, this is crazy next level. But I could see her doing something like that, like to that extent that requires like security clearance or
Those
something.
guys that came up to get her were given like Elon Musk, like work for Tesla vibes.
100,
And
yeah.
then like finally, obviously, to touch base on Cordelia, a personal shopper, like that totally makes sense for her. But motivational speaker, I was like, you don't want not want Cordelia saying anything motivational to you. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, Cordelia herself is very motivational in her words, if you can take her words with a grain of salt, because she just dishes shit out to say it. She's not going to hold back. She's going to be unapologetic with what she says. So her message will get out there, but it might not be received quite so well. So that was where I laid on the fence with Cordelia as a motivational speaker.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like she would be a motivational speaker for a very like niche audience. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Other Cordettes. Popular
Basically, yeah.
girls.
She would basically be like the leader of a cult.
Oh. Well, in the library, Giles goes to set down the stack of 26 books that I counted, and they almost tip over, but Buffy smacks a hand on them to support them, making her presence known and lending a literal hand. Buffy tells Giles of the two vampires that she caught the night before, one having stole something out of the mausoleum, and Giles begins to pace back and forth, asking if she saw what they took, and she takes a guess that it was something old. He isn't pleased.
Well, what if it wasn't? This could be very serious. I mean, if you'd made an effort to be more thorough in your observations.
If you don't like the way I'm doing my job, why don't you find somebody else? Oh, that's right. There can only be one. As long as I'm alive, there is no one else. Well, there you go. I don't have to be the Slayer. I could be dead.
We see what the writers did here too, putting it out there as a reminder. There's only supposed to be one Slayer at this too, because she's like, I could be dead. Geez, Buffy, morbid much? They're kind of breadcrumbing in that sense for what we get to next episode whenever we're in the
Mhm.
library discussing this stuff. Giles doesn't find her comments funny and expresses once more that she just needs to find out what was in the crypt. Cutscene transition magic to the factory, where we see the item stolen was the gold cross that Drusilla's admiring, but definitely not touching. But it surely hums as she can hear it. She's like, it hums, as she's tracing her fingers around its aura. I was like, I didn't hear shit, but I'm also not insane. So, and when we were
Yes.
watching it together, I was like, you should touch it. Burn them fingers, that way you can't type revamped. Spike gets clarity that this is what they needed from her and says that they will celebrate once she's well again. Dalton calls out to them, what about the Slayer? She was there and she's trouble for them. She could get in the way. Spike calling her the gnat in his ear, as well as a bloody thorn in his bloody side. They got to do something because they can't complete their plans with that bitch breathing down their necks. His words, literally. AKA time to bring in the big guns, the Order of Ță'ăracă. Dalton calls them the bounty hunters as Drew flips over her tarot cards once more, showing 3 of them, saying that they're coming to her party. I'm like, you ain't having a party? Not yet, anyways. This should just be enough to kill the Slayer. Also, that's where we see the 3 cards, and I'm like, none of these are actual tarot cards, except one of them.
I do wonder if I would have noticed that, like, right offhand, had you not been watching it with me and pointed that out. Like, I wonder if I would have paid attention and been like, wait, those aren't even real tarot cards. Like, what the fuck is this cheetah?
They must be oracle cards, like the ones for these ones. Like, I could get that. I mean, maybe not the devil card, but the other 2 and the angel card. I could see those being like omen cards or, oracle reading cards for sure. So, I mean, I'm not going to decrypt them all the way and like go crazy, but either way. At school the next day, Willow is looking for Buffy, and Xander says that she's off with Giles, and she trips out because Snyder is lingering. And if he finds her gone during the school's hours, this spells bad, just as he appears, and they change convo course, which leads them to try buttering him up, and Xander's all like telling him that he's so inspired for the amazing career fair that he's put on, and that he's thinking principal school.
I want to walk in your shoes. Not your actual shoes, of course, because you're a tiny person. Not tiny in the small sense, of course. Okay, I'm done now.
This shit was funny. Snyder asked them where the fuck Buffy is at. Willow trying to feed him the bull that he's already expecting. She's around here somewhere stuff. Damn, Snyder knows all the tricks because he's like, don't feed me that line about she's around here somewhere. I just saw her. And Buffy and Willow swears to him that this is the case. She's like, but I did just see her and she is around here somewhere. And I'm like, Willow, you are a straight liar. For someone who can't lie any other time, you definitely be lying for Buffy in this type of case.
She'd definitely be trying.
Poor Xander, too, because no matter what we say about him, this asshole Snyder is so mean to him in this moment. Xander's trying to be like, for what it's worth, and Snyder says,
what it's worth?
It's worth nothing, Harris. Whatever comes out of your mouth is a meaningless waste of breath. An airborne toxic event.
How in the hell does he get by with this shit? I was like, fuck Snyder, because he just seems to get nastier as time goes on. Like, we've seen him be a dick, but like, he just literally told this student that he's worthless and useless and his words mean nothing. Who the fuck says that to somebody? Snyder. It makes sense why his name is Snyder, snide ass little man. Because you're a tiny person. But Xander is chill here and is just like, I hope I'm in the position one day to be just as honest back at you, mate. Then Xander has the dip to go over to his career group, and these creepy men, the Elon Musk guys, come up and get Willow to take her over to that private room to try the canapé because it's excellent. Firm nah from Willow, apparently, though she's been selected for a meeting with the head of software whose jet is running late. His private jet. Ooh. Must be Mr. Musk. And only one other student met her criteria in the area, leaving her alone as we pan over to see Oz sitting there alone with her. He just offers her some canapé, and it's so awkward. He's like, canapé? Fun fact, canapé is a small bite-sized appetizer, in case y'all didn't know and wanted to know, so you're welcome. I didn't know what canapé was, and I was like, is there like something weird on this plate that's called canapé? No, it's literally the whole plate. But I was like, eek! I was like, what does all this mean? I remember pushing record really quick for a little reaction for you. I also think it's really funny that we still get these 2 in a room together finally, like they're forced, and then we get nothing from the scene because they just cliffhang us here and continue to breadcrumb. They just leave from the scene. But I'm curious if they had a conversation there, even if it was like small and minute, like introduce themselves or whatever. Because when we see Oz again later, Willow's like, oh, that's Oz. He's expressing computer solidarity, whatever the comment is that she makes. I think that's next episode. But like, we don't get anything else from this scene. But were you happy that they finally got forced into a room together?
I was, but then my joy got killed because, like you said, it brought us nothing. And I was like, finally, that's happening. Something's happening. But we're still literally in the same place. We
Mhm.
just had an additional scene shared with the two that are like all the other scenes that they've shared that leave us with nothing. So I'm just like, bro, I cannot. I thought I was impatient for like the Angel Buffy thing and all of this other stuff that's come up so far. But now I'm just like, can we please get there faster?
Well,
I'm
he doesn't
ready.
have to be who is that girl anymore because he knows now.
Well, and that's why I think that they had a conversation, because I can't imagine that after that many incidents of them being basically like passerbys with each other and him obviously having noticed her right away from the first time he saw her, and he knows he's ran into her or had these close encounters with her, I feel like why would he not take the opportunity to at least like say 3 words to
Mhm.
her and initiate a conversation. So I hope they did. It might be wishful thinking, but it seems like it because, like you said, she made that comment about like his character basically alluding to like
A
knowing
little
him a
bit
little bit
more.
more
Mhm.
deeply. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We never get to see it though, and that's sad. But we'll see
So
what happens
sad.
moving forward. We cut over to a sunny day in the cemetery, which we've never seen before because it's always dark whenever we're at the cemetery. She's walking with Giles there to find what was taken from the mausoleum. Giles doesn't ever do cardio apparently either because he's struggling to keep up with Buffy and out of breath. You commented on that. I thought that was funny.
Me yesterday running across that field.
Yeah. um, him speaking on career week madness and her possibility of also taking up employment one day, wondering if she ever thought of law enforcement. She so doesn't want to have that convo though. Her making that comment, and she's like, "What am I gonna do? Carve steaks for a nursery?" I was like, "What kind of nursery? A Slayer nursery? All the Slayers are dead." So like, I don't know, it's just stupid joke. But she points him in the direction of the tomb that they've arrived at, talking about Urbex too. Like this was like a whole vibe. Like this is like the stone mausoleum we went to yesterday. Inside, he inspects the chiseled wall that was definitely for housing important items such as body parts or religious items. He's like, a finger or whatever, and finds the name written above having belonged to 𝑑uloc. And he's like, oh dear, and immediately worries Buffy. She's like, I hate when you say that. And then she's also like, makes the comment about, she's like, religion, freaky, because of what he says about the finger.
Note to self, religion, freaky.
But either way, this all like really worries Giles because he's like, you remember that book that was stolen from me, the one from Lie to Me? It took one of my books. That book was apparently written by 𝑑uloc, and now this tomb is belonging to 𝑑uloc. That book being the one that contained rituals and spells that reap unspeakable evil, he tells Buffy, and he guarantees something is coming that is 100% not of the good. And they're like, fuck, these are connections here. And I'm like, well, y'all are connecting the dots, that's for sure. I think this scene's the funniest too. I mentioned it to you while we were watching. The fact that Giles brings up law enforcement work for Buffy, like, just shows that he went and looked at that bulletin board to see what Buffy's category that she got saddled with was. Like, he took the time on his own to go over there and look, because that was definitely not a conversation that came up, because he's talking about it here. He's like, have you ever looked into law enforcement or thought about this? And she's like, bruh, at our favorite place over at the bus station, no raisin mummies walking around today. We just find a grizzly bounty hunter looking motherfucker getting off of the bus, scarred the fuck up, half his eye missing. He's got the damn foggy eye. And then we flash over to Ravello Drive, aka Buffy Street, as a sailman passes by Buffy's home and goes over to her neighbors. Miss Kalish is her name. I didn't know, but it's in the script, so her name is Miss Kalish. Sad to say that she's about to not live through this episode. He knocks on her door and offers her some super enticing free skincare samples, and she's all about the free and invites him inside. 2 seconds later, us hearing her scream inside the home after the door shuts, and I'm like, damn, this guy looks like a regular Joe too.
No, he does not. He looked creepy to me. There ain't no fucking way I was gonna let him in my house. I don't care what kind of free shit he had.
Um,
I'm just
I do
saying.
like whenever she screams, it matches the sounds of racing airplanes, because we get the landing airplane over at the Sunnydale Airport, which is another location we have not seen before. And we see a man unloading the cargo hold and telling someone that obviously is in there as a stowaway that they're not supposed to be in there. We see him get his ass handed to him by fists and feet getting laid out as a young ethnic woman gets out of the cargo hold and exits the plane mysteriously. I remember whenever we got that scene, you were like, because you were just like, all these motherfuckers, like, they all here to get Buffy.
Totally.
I remember the first time I saw her get out the cargo hold though, like I immediately loved her like satin, like red looking pants that she had on her little crop top. Like, cause it's like all burgundy
Mhm.
fit that's just all going together. And she's got like these boots on. She looks like she's a badass. And I was like, she's really pretty. Bianca Lawson in general is super gorgeous and she never
So
ages.
pretty.
But I just remember being like, damn, like you got this like ugly motherfucker that got off, and then you got this like what 40-50-year-old man that's selling Avon, Mary Kay or whatever the fuck he's got going on, and then you
No,
flash
it's
over to someone
creepy.
like Kendra and you're like, well damn, well this bounty hunter is really pretty.
I know, and I think they did such a good job with alluding to the fact that she might be like the cheetah in the
Uh-huh.
situation or whatever, because that's like the total vibe I got from her. Like she was like the way that she was
Yep.
moving, though her outfit, it all gave like that vibe. And I was like, oh shit, she's about to like really kick some ass. Like I'm
I know,
worried.
right? I have a fun fact about the cheetah person because we know who the cheetah person is in part 2. I'll say it next week for everybody else. In the library, Willow and Xander are getting informed on their findings at the tomb. Giles has figured out that Duloc's cross was what was stolen. They about to have a research party, as Willow puts it. She's like, ooh, research party. And Giles says they need to find out what was in the book connecting to the cross before the vampires do. Buffy can't make that party, though. She has date plans with Angel and Lax in the book area anyway, except you found the info. I like wrote myself. I was like, and never kill a boy on the first date. You like found out what the stars and the sun meant on that ring. You found the info on bugs and teacher's pet and helped put all of that information together. And not to mention, I'm a refrain from naming off all the other times. And I was like, girl, just shut up and go. Like, you know what I mean? She's trying to make excuses. And I'm like, you've proven to yourself, because remember she made that whole comment and never kill a boy on the first date to Josh. She's like,
Yes, you're right.
Ooh, 2 points for the Slayer, while the Watcher has yet to score.
or whatever the fuck she says. You know what I mean? So I'm like, Buffy,
Totally.
don't
Yeah.
try to go back on your shit now. So you want to like build yourself up when it comes to that. But I'm like, ugh, whatever. Convenience for her. And I love it too because Buffy eyes over whenever Giles is like, no, you need to be here for this. And she's like eyeing Willow, who catches on quick and backs her up to condition Giles to think that she just needs to go gather her strengths. Once again, being the very best Bangel stan and best friend supporter of Buffy's deceptions. Good Willow. Buffy leaves the library, and I like it because she's like, I've got somewhere to be. And I'm like, you just said you didn't want to do research and all this other stuff, but you're talking about I got somewhere to be. And Giles ain't going to question
I
this at
know.
all. Giles isn't like, hey, get back here. What are you talking about? He just lets her go. But it's because we have to have this cute scene, which we get next as we cut over to her ice skating on the rink. A graceful ice slayer princess, if we've ever seen it. Bet Dorothy Hamill can't slay the undead, though. She's made it to her Tuesday date, and Angel apparently hasn't made it there yet. She showed up first. I'm like, this is the date he's standing her up? Where is he? Or this bounty hunter who is creeping in looking at Buffy through the door. That foggy eyes giving me the Wiggins, but not the weekly Wiggins. Buffy attempts to do a move but loses her balance and falls up against the wall to the rink, and just in time for the man to grab her from behind and hoist her up, attempting strangulation. But Angel runs in vamped out to get him off of her. They battle briefly and he gets the upper hand on Angel when Buffy comes skating up, grabbing the netting that's above them and pulling herself into the air, swinging an ice skate blade to the assassin's neck, slitting that shit the fuck up, him dying on the floor. And he like has that dramatic ass as he all walks out onto the ice. He's like, but yeah, like just leading up to that scene, I like whenever we were talking about it, because I don't have it in my notes or anything, so I want to give Buffy and Sarah Michelle Gellar her moment of glory. She did all that ice skating herself because you were like saying, you made a comment and you're like,
I was like, do you think she had to learn how to
that's what
ice
it was.
skate just for this? And yeah, you told me that this is actually a thing she does, which was
Yeah,
super
I thought it was
interesting.
cute. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar is a known ice skater, like not really known in the world, but known by her life for being an ice skater.
Well, and the more the scene played out, I could tell,
Mhm.
like it's super obvious. You can tell after you watch the scene for a second that it's just something that she seems really natural at. And I think I said it to you, even it seems like it's like riding a bike where you put your skates on and you go out there and you just know once you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah, it's a cute
Yeah.
little scene. They play that little montage of music with her and just show different scenes of her, like her sequence skating all over the thing. And this is like
Hmm.
the first time we've ever really seen Buffy just doing something normal that we would do in everyday life. Because I ice
Yeah.
skate all the time.
It's
uh,
definitely normal for
literally only
us.
been one time in my whole life. We flash really quickly over to the factory too. Drusilla flips the card over, which was that devil card that had the image of the one-eyed devil on it. Funny because this motherfucker had that one eye, so I was like, I see it. And then she makes the comment. She's like, he's passing under our feet as we speak. AKA, he has a one-way ticket to the damned and hell on the way to Hades. Spike isn't worried though, because there's still 2 more to go, and they're almost done deciphering the book. I'm like, oh no, they're almost done. Buffy makes the joke back over at the Ice Palace. The Hellmouth presents dead guys on ice as Angel searches his body, seeing his ring and pointing out that she's in serious danger. He's like, do you know what this ring means? And she's like, that I just killed a Super Bowl champ or some shit like that.
Yeah,
And he's like, this is serious. And I was like, well, why'd you ask her if she knows what the ring means? Why don't you go ahead and tell her since you know what the fucking ring means? He advises her, though, to go home and wait for him, also asking if she's okay. And he's the one with the bust up forehead in the same spot Spike's scar is, by the way, just to say. He wants to get her out of there, but she's invested in his injury, thinking he is worried about her hurting him. But that's not what's on his mind, as he still is in vamp face, as we can see, and calls out that she shouldn't have to touch him when he's like this. And I was like, okay, well, then morph back to human. Like, are you still just wowed up and that's why you're in the vampire state? Like, what's going on? She, however, didn't even notice, taking off her glove to touch his bumpy brow region, then his lips, before locking hers to his and sharing a passionate kiss on ice, which is super cute, giving new meaning to a vampire in love with a slayer. How poetic. Unfortunately for them, though, the girl from the plane is watching them from afar, scolding them. You know, she's got those eyes squinting like she loves to do so damn much. As we'll see featured all next episode. And I did want to feature this callback. This is really important, and I didn't really ever pay it attention. During the scene with Buffy kissing Angel, if you remember in the season 1 episode Angel, Buffy had kissed him and he turned into the vamp and jumped out the window. Darla asked Angel when she was like taunting him in his apartment,
What did you think? Did you think she would understand? She would look at your face, your true face, and give you a kiss?
and now in this episode she does. So fuck off, Darla. Like, eternally mad because you lost to Buffy. That's all that is. And I thought it was interesting how they paired that. I mean, we've never seen obviously Buffy kiss him while he's in vampire form, and this shows her affection for him is growing, that she just sees Angel. She doesn't see his vampire side. She just sees the totality of his being. So she's accepted all parts of him, and she didn't bat an eye towards the disruption of his face, because I would have been like, you trying to change back, or also you trying to come into my house and like pound me up real quick, like why you in vamp face?
Brand.
Angel's hot. Who else here? Write in if you want Angel to pound you up. I know you all do.
No, I totally agree though. But I think that it was sweet because, like you said, there's that added layer of just like her very unconditional sense of love toward him. And now it's very visual and we can see it, and it's a tangible moment that they share. And I really appreciated it because, like you said, it's crossing a threshold because this is the first time on the show. So I was like, oh shit, I don't think this has happened before.
I love it. I also want to know if they left the assassin's body on the rink, like dead on the ice, because it just flashes over to the next part of the
What
season.
a perfect place to leave a dead body, because it'll never decompose.
When the rink opens on Wednesday, they're gonna be like, what the fuck is this one-eyed freak dead scarred up dude doing in here with his neck split up?
Drusilla can just come through with her tarot card and like put it on top of him, and then they'll know who he is.
I mean, it also pegs the question too. Like, Angel said that the ice rink is closed on Tuesdays, and I'm sure Angel could find a way to get in there, but how did Buffy get in there and be skating around when it's closed?
How did the one-eyed devil man get in there?
Buffy left the door open. Buffy was in there first, but apparently we can just, like, I guess next time fucking something's closed, I'm just gonna go walk up in there and be like, well, I have authority to be in here.
Urbex.
As abandoned places, no one should be in there except everyone.
No, there's active urbexing.
Oh, is there really? Oh,
Hell
shit.
yeah.
They have a whole other culture of life that I didn't even know about.
Yeah, illegal AF. That's why I don't talk about it.
I love to be well informed, and now I am. To be informed further, though, in the library, Buffy has brought the ring to Giles as she tells him the ring was giving Angel the negative vibes. Giles confirming those vibes were legit, as the ring belongs to members of the Order of Tiraka. Xander making jokes as Giles explains the history of the assassins, and Giles is not having it, actually, because he tells Xander to shut the fuck up. He's like,
That's enough, Xander.
he like gets scolded. Buffy and Willow in their heads going, ooh, like they just look over at Xander. They're like, fuck. And Giles does apologize, saying that it isn't the time for jokes, as this is quite serious, which is good on Giles' part to be like, oh shit, that was a little out there for me to just do this. Buffy wonders why they're after her. Giles doesn't know, though, but he does mention getting Buffy out of Dodge, saying we should find like a safe place to put you. And it deeply worries Buffy because he and Angel have claimed that she should head for the hills, thinking he believes that she can't fight them. But that's not the case. It's the fact that they will keep replacing one after the other until their bounty is collected.
They find a target and they eliminate it. You can kill as many of them as you like. It won't make any difference. Where there's one, there will be another and another. They won't stop coming until the job is done.
And that's creepy as fuck. She's like, one will replace the other, and then the other, and then another, and then another will come. And then they'll never stop until their bounty is fucking collected, until you're dead, Buffy, which is terrifying because that means there's endless people out here. Because you were like, how is that when there was just the three of them? And I had to go on a tangent and tell you, like, well, after those three failed, then another set just keep coming. I did want to point out, too, that there is variety within the order. Some are human, some are not, because Giles goes on that tangent to say, like, some could be, you know, someone that you see in every day. Another could be a creature or things like that. When obviously we flash over to the house next to Buffy's house while he's still giving this little bit of a monologue. That man is sitting in the chair about the dead woman on the floor getting eaten up by worms, having stole Courtney's binoculars for bird watching, hella zoomed in on Buffy's bedroom across the way as that trail of mealworms feast on that homeowner's body, I said, and then they slowly connect to him. And I think it zooms over to his arm and half of his arm's missing, and that one worm like starts to complete with other ones and then he picks up his tea mug with his hand that's reformed. So obviously he can disassemble himself and become nothing but a bunch of bugs, aka mealworms. I'm like, mealworms are about the nastiest looking worm too out there, like all the things.
I agree.
It's not really the greatest CGI whenever his hand comes back to life, but for the time, you know, it's acceptable enough. But yeah, in the halls at the school, Buffy has left the library and she is hella on edge as some very intense music plays. And it's like, it's got like shing sounds, like from like knives and like, you know, like blades and stuff like that. And like when people pass by her, like it's doing all this weird fucking like on edge type music. And then poor Oz is just walking up behind Buffy, like just trying to pass her. And she like spins around and grabs him by the throat and jacks him up against the wall. And he gets hella confused on what he's supposed to try because she's like, try it. And he's like, what? And she apologizes though, walking off and giving him an intriguing first impression above anything else. And then he calls her a very tense person whenever she walks off. I'm like, yeah, but if you had been in the library 5 seconds ago, whenever they said that she got a bounty on her head, like I remember whenever she was going through the scene, you made a comment and I was like, well, how would you be acting if you just got told everybody could be out to kill you and you don't know who was who around you?
I mean, I was just saying she could go home and smoke a little weed with her mom and get like a little bit more calm. That's all. I wasn't saying she should like ignore her problems, you know, like those are very obvious, but at least you could take the edge off and not be strangling random people in the hallway at school because you're so on edge. Can't nobody walk by you even to get to their locker. Poor Oz is like, what the
He's just
fuck?
trying to get some more canapé. Like he's just trying to head back to that little room to get him some little treats. I think that's funny too though, because like before we even saw Willow and Oz have a conversation, Buffy has now interacted with him and exchanged words. And I was like,
That's
the fuck?
true, yeah.
Then we next find Buffy heading home as she's seen on her street, eyeing her dark home. She's not really feeling the vibes of being at home right now, which is smart on her because her mother's not home. And she keeps on walking. And I remember, what did you say?
I was like, why is she so on edge at school in the freaking hallway? And can't nobody walk past her? But then you're literally going to willingly be walking at 11 p.m. at night by yourself on the way home out in the street.
Yeah.
And you regularly get attacked by vampires, but you are on edge at school surrounded by people. Like, I'm just like, what's going on
Absolutely.
here? She entered a whole different headspace at nighttime. She said it's Slayer time, bitch.
Oh my God, so accurate. The gang deep into research at the library. Willow and Giles are talking about how Buffy took off and seemed really bothered. Xander coming in to say that she's not at home. He's called a bunch of times, remembering now that her mom is out of town. Giles is like, well, maybe my words of caution were a bit alarming. And Xander's like, you think? And then he also makes some kind of comment about, she's like, well, maybe Buffy unplugged the phone. And he's like,
it's a statistical fact that a 16-year-old girl will not unplug her phone or take it off the hook, whatever.
Yeah, and then Willow's like over there like looking at Giles, shaking her head. She's like, yeah, that's true. But Willow says that it's good that she took Giles seriously, but them wishing that they knew where she was. And we know because we see her arriving at Angel's place. That's Angel's apartment, Courtney.
I know now.
Courtney was like, where the fuck is she at? She like laid up on the bed and she's like, whose house is she at? And I'm like,
I missed it totally for a second. All I see her is laying down in some weird bed, and you could tell they like did a good job like vamping out Angel's space, because it definitely looks like a place where a vampire would live. But that's why I was confused, because I was like, where did she go?
Well, the only other time that we saw it was in Angel, like when Darla was in there with him, and it was darkly lit in there that day too. And then we also saw it again in Prophecy Girl whenever Xander came to get Angel to come to the Master's Lair with him, and that was pretty much just Angel sitting in a chair. You know what I mean? Because he patting him down with that
Yeah.
cross and shit.
It's like up to you to decide it's
But yeah,
Angel's.
well, obviously Buffy feels that it's a safe place for her to hang and take refuge, so she just lays down on that bed and basically falls asleep. Over at a bar, we see a man sweeping the floor, seeing someone appear at his door, yelling at them, "We're fucking closed." And he's like, "I'm here to daytime her Bex, motherfucker." But he didn't realize it was Angel till he steps into some light, and he's like, "Oh, Angel," quickly retrieving his words. He's like, "What's up, man? Come on in. I'm open all the time for you." Asking what he can do for him. Angel's comfort info, though. The man saying he is far from that scene and hasn't been doing wrong in the world. Liar. Angel addressing his name as Willie. Sure he has, on opposite day. AKA also the day Angel will take up sunbathing, because that's what Angel says. He's like, and I've taken up sunbathing. Like, it's funny. Angel asks him who sent the order, but Willie claims he's not in the loop. Angel isn't playing fucking games, though, and gets snarky saying, "Let's try again," stating they're after the Slayer, questioning was it Spike? Willie doesn't want to talk, and Angel decides slamming his head against the bar and holding it down aggressively might help him jog his memory. Who starts singing that is in fact who sent them, saying he was sick of Angel's girl getting in his way. And I was like, he's talking about, I don't have any of this information. He's like, yeah, he's sick of your girlfriend like getting in his way, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And I'm like, so you did know all this stuff, so you, instead of getting your head smashed up in the fucking thing, you could have just said this. Like, clearly you don't know how to do business, Willie, and you learn things the hard way, as we'll come to find. Angel asks where he can find Spike, and he has the audacity to try to bargain for money. He's like, well, maybe for a few bucks. And he's like, what? Pushing his head to the fucking damn table more, finding this very laughable. And Willie is just about to spill the beans. Like, literally, he starts to say the sentence that Angel needs, and Angel's kicked in the face, falling to the floor, looking up to find the woman that we've seen all episode, breaking the wooden broom Willie was sweeping with in half to forge a stake and swinging it at him. We obviously get a fake commercial break there and come right back in as Angel moves out the way, getting to his feet to take her on. She kicks him in the back room, having the upper hand as he vamps out and blocks the stake once again. The two tussle some more, but she stands her ground and kicks him into the cage space that's in that room. He asks,
Who are you? If you tell me what I need to know, I won't hurt you.
and she just smiles and starts chuckling to herself. And he is not pleased with this. He's like, you think this is funny? And then she shuts the door and puts a fucking lock on it and says to him, I think it is funny now.
I think it is funny now.
Asking about the girl that he was with before.
That girl, the one I saw you with before.
You stay away from her.
I'm afraid you are not in a position to threaten.
Him arguing when he gets out he will do more than that. Her offering he move quickly, looking back to the window that's facing him and the spot that he's in, stating that sunrise is in a few hours, aka as soon as that sun comes beaming through there, it's filling that whole room with sunlight, and any vampire activity that's going on there is going to be dust activity. She says, more than enough time for me to find your girlfriend. As she leaves him in there, she just walks off slowly and shit. And obviously we find out who she is. And I love, like, obviously we can talk about it for sure next episode, but this is where I said we might merge the two episodes. If you're really watching it, she breaks that steak in half really quick and attacks him with it. That's key indicator right now that we got a Slayer on our hands. And the hand-to-hand combat that she gets with Angel in the bar and basically overcomes his ass really quick. That's giving Vampire Slayer energy too. If you were to take your mind out of that and be like, oh, this is a Slayer and you already know it, you can see all the elements there that she's like kind of looking like and giving off the energy that Buffy gives off whenever she's like in her element. Like, this is the one creature she knows how to deal with. She said, I'm Kindra, the Vampire Slayer. But we're not there yet. In the library, Giles calls Xander to say that he should check Buffy's house again. I don't think we can hear Xander's words. He's like, I don't know, just have Cordelia go, like, call her and get her to drive you. I was like, Giles calling this man at 6 a.m. in the morning too, because right afterwards he goes over to Willow and like wakes her up like over there where she's passed out over the table on the books, because apparently she's been there doing research with them all night. And I was like, Xander obviously went home at some point in the night, and Giles, first thing, a sun's coming up, he's like calling Xander, and I'm like like, there's just no rest for the wicked, I guess. But either way, he wakes up Willow, and whenever she wakes up, she's like, don't warn the tadpoles. And he's like, don't worry the tadpoles, like curious about her statement. And she informs him that she has frog fear. He tells her of his findings while she was rightfully sleeping. She tries to apologize, and she's like, I'm sorry I fell asleep. And he's like, babe, it's okay. You were here all night researching. We understand why you were falling asleep. Like, normal people like to sleep, except me, because I'm Giles. I stay up all night worrying. And he tells her that he also hasn't gotten all the info, but believes it speaks on a ritual to restore a weak or sick vampire back to health. And then Willow questions, like, Drusilla? And he replies, exactly. At the factory, Dalton has finally deciphered the text. Also, the missing key to her salvation has been right there in front of them the whole time. Spike and Drusilla mention as she places his hand on a tarot card of a fallen angel. She's like, it's been here all along, right in front of our faces. Y'all thought I was done impersonating people. It didn't end with Luke.
It never ends.
While over at Buffy's, Cordy and Xander arrive and are walking up to Buffy's house as she's bitching at him about asking her for a ride, waking her up early in the morning, because obviously this is like Saturday morning probably. Then the two exchange their normal snap remarks back and forth. He knocks on the door calling for Buffy, trying to find a way in since no one answers, telling Cordy,
Come on, Cordelia. You want to be a member of the Scooby Gang, you gotta be willing to be inconvenienced every now and then.
Right.
She's like,
Right, because I lie awake at night hoping you tweakos will be my best friends. And that my first husband will be a balding, demented, homeless man.
He finds an open window, cutting her off, telling her Buffy could be in trouble. This gains them entry, and he comes around and opens the door for her. She isn't sure what Xander would do about that, though, saying that she's the super chick, not his lame ass. And then they go inside. He goes upstairs to check for Buffy, leaving Cordy downstairs when the fucking guy from next door comes knocking on the door, Cordy answering and him doing his free sample spew, and Cordelia being super stoked about the free, lets this guy inside as that same eerie music starts to creep in and the door shuts on it. And I'm like, oh, hell. We're all like, I remember you was like, fuck. You're like, damn, they about to kill Cordelia and Xander. And I thought it was funny. Norman wasted absolutely no time seeing activity over at the Summers house before going over there. He's like, ooh, someone's home. I can go over there now. I was like, what? He's like, all right, time to get buggy and sell some makeup. Then it clips us over to Willie's bar again. Angel is kicking and prying on the door, trying to escape. A beam of sunlight slowly making its way into the cage. And then we get our ending scene over with Buffy at Angel's, who has gracefully fallen asleep on his bed, and she's having the most peaceful sleep and dream ever. That is until her eyes open and she is alerted when a hatchet comes down at her face. Her rolling out of the way. Thank God for Slayer awareness. That damn hatchet embeds in an angel's pillow. We see the woman has found Buffy and is attacking her. Buffy flips over her on the bed, which was a cool as fuck move, and she spins around to face her and she goes,
You must be number 2.
pulling a curtain over her and kicking her back. Buffy banters about her non-clock radio wake-up call as the girl swings the hatchet at her again, Buffy blocking her advances, the girl flipping Buffy over, pushing the hatchet towards Buffy's face as she struggles to push it away, and Buffy saying, come on, don't make me do the chick fight thing, and the girl's like, chick fight? And Buffy's like, pull hair, sink my nails into skin, because that's what she does. She like grips her nails into her skin and then yanks her hair back. And I was like, oh, that's what you mean by chick fight shit. She's like, where my Vaseline, hold my earrings, all the things. Which Buffy does, getting her off of her, kicking to her feet, taking on the girl, kicking the hatchet from her hands. And I love that scene too. It just gets in a fast sequence too. And she gets that fucking shit out of her hands. And then it's like they're doing the hop kicks and all the things. She flips Buffy over onto Angel's coffee table. And I was like, when Angel comes home, he ain't got nothing but a wrecked apartment after this, because that coffee table's broke up. They don't smash windows and shit like that all up in here. Like, what's going on? Buffy kicks both her feet up into the girl's face when she comes at her again, kicking her once more, knocking her back, and she kick flips back up. The girl does, not Buffy. Both girls standing in fighting stance before one another. The woman asking Buffy, who are you? Buffy is like,
Who am I? You attacked me. Who the hell are you?
The girl looks to Buffy, stiffens her lip, and looks proud as she states back,
I'm Kendra, the vampire slayer.
Buffy looks stunned. We fade to black as the words "to be continued" appear on the screen, and here endeth the first part of the episode. Big ass cliffhanger. Yeah, but this episode's fun because it leads into all of this and then leaves you on a fucking cliffhanger for everybody. Like, you don't know what's going on with Xander and Cordelia. Norman's in the house with them, so we're like, oh fuck, what's going on with that? And then we get this cliffhanger that this girl is saying that she's a slayer, which is super confusing, because most people at this point are probably like, wait, what? She's got to be lying. She's got to, I think you were saying that in your opening statement. You're like, is she lying?
Totally,
Like, what does this mean?
I was not expecting that. It was a definite plot twist from my viewpoint, but a good one, that's for sure, because that's so unforeseen. That's like the last thing I'm sure that most people expected to come out of her mouth as far as her revealing her identity is concerned, because of course this entire time it is like literally just the most prominent theme of the fucking show that there's only one Slayer. So why would you ever anticipate some information like this? So for me, I was just like, my first reflex thought definitely was like, oh, she's lying. She's going to try to like manipulate Buffy emotionally and try to seem on her wavelength and convince her she's a Slayer and like all this stuff. So I didn't know what the fuck was going to happen, but that was the first initial thought I had. I was like, she's got to be lying.
Yeah, to speak once more and like regurgitate the same shit we were saying, but we had the build up thinking that she was part of the Order the whole episode. I think it's awesome that they added the line, "You must be number 2," because you would be thinking that this is the second assassin that's gotten to Buffy because of the way that they've unfolded all this. But in fact, she is number 2. She's the second Slayer because of what we find out the next episode. So I thought it was a fun little word choice or sentence that they put in there for Buffy, because she's like, "You must be number 2," and I'm like, well, she is. So
technically, yeah,
clearly
totally.
not the case. So fun stuff. If I had to close on some stuff just from this episode, I would highlight like the opening for Willow and Oz finally getting paired up by the universe, aka the uni. Like the angel moments that we get along this with the setup of all the scenarios. It is pretty cool how they show, upon revealing Kendra at the end of part 1, has you thinking that she was part of the Order because of this clever deception of timing with the others arriving in town as well. Just very interesting how they unfolded the episode. It's very delicately done in that way, and it really is there to elude us into like non-reality. It's just like we haven't seen really that in an episode where we've been like fucked with in that way. So that's really fun that they chose to do that. It was more fun to watch this unfold for you, because obviously I've been talking about this as like, these are 2 big episodes. Getting to watch your reaction to it and know that you're basically getting alluded to the fact that Kendra's like one of the bounty hunters, and then by the end, like the fact that she's dropping that she's a Slayer, you're left like, what the fuck? And you get this whole reveal. Like that's just the best part about watching the show, when somebody has these bigger moments. And then obviously the next episode, which we will get into next week and stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that until we pick up for the next one. For metaphor, before we actually get into fun facts, I'm going to seal that all up for part 2 and just talk about everything as a culmination for whatever needs to go down there. But some fun facts that I didn't already mention for this episode. The episode title refers to an American game show in the 1950s that had the same name. It was called What's My Line? I've never watched it, obviously. I wasn't alive in the 50s, and I don't go back and watch stuff like that, so... But I found it along my journey of search. The title Scooby Gang is used for the first time, given to the group by Xander. I know we've been talking about Scooby Gang, and I said when we were doing season 1, it was hard to not refer to them as the Scooby Gang, because that's just iconically what they're known as, which kind of makes sense because the Scooby Gang is like Daphne, Shaggy, Scooby, and they're always trying to solve a mystery and stuff like that. So it makes sense why they're called the Scooby Gang in the show, because they're always trying to figure out what's going on in the town, how they can defeat the next evil, or, unveil the masked intruder, or whatever it is. Willow's frog fear, rhinodophobia. I think I said it right. I was like questioning to myself, because this is like a question for later whenever it happens in a way again. But if Willow is afraid of frogs, how is she able to cut one's eyes out in Witch with no problem for their potion that they were making to pour that little blue shit on Amy? If you got frog fear, you might think that you don't want to fuck with frogs at all. And also, whenever she's an Inca mummy girl and she's talking about the options of like, getting over Xander or move on, she's like, I haven't chosen yet. She's playing with a little stuffed frog right there. So like, why are you like, if you're scared of frogs, why are you playing with a stuffed frog animal?
Maybe if they're dead and stuffed, it doesn't apply.
Or if you're cutting their fucking eyeballs out. I don't know.
That's what I mean.
The Order assassin that gets his throat slit by Buffy is named Octaris. Funny because Oct obviously means eye. So I thought that was funny. I don't know what the rest of it means, but I know the word Oct is usually means something optical.
It probably means no eye.
Well, no throat either. The scenes of Xander and Cordy at Buffy's house were on location at the real house. In the next episode, they have now built a model house on set for Buffy's home, and we'll use this for the show the rest of the way forward, except for the images that you get with the camera, like outside the house, or like when Buffy was walking up and stuff. That's still the real location, but now every image that we see moving forward in the series is a mock-up of the house that they've built on set, so that way they don't have to go to the house, which I never knew that they were always doing this filming at the actual house location, which is a very small home. So they have to like open up that space to make it like fit cameras and people and like actors and all that shit in there.
And everything.
So obviously the mock-up of the house is enlarged just a little bit, so that way they can like fit all that stuff in and like take walls down and stuff and make life easier. But I didn't know that upon watching, so I thought that was cool. And Dorothy Hamill obviously is a reference to gold medalist Winter Olympic figure skater Dorothy Hamill. So I thought it was nice that they chose to make that Buffy's favorite of everything. Now we can get into our final slays.
Final slays.
Final slays. Quotes for the episode. I have two. Mine were Xander and Buffy's exchange in the beginning when she's like, "It's all Mootville for me. We already know my deal." And Xander goes, "High risk, sub minimum wage." And Buffy goes, "Pointy wooden things." And then my second one was from Spike. The first time Spike made it into my quotes for the episode. I like whenever Drusilla asks him if he'll dance with her now, and he says, "I'll dance with you, my pet, on the Slayer's grave," and like spins around dancing with her. I just really like that thing. It was a fun way to like pun play your words.
It was a fun way for him to be a savage.
For real. And that's probably why I liked it more, because I was like, oh, he's really like cocky about this. So
Yeah. My quote was from Principal Snidey towards Xander when he was like, "Whatever comes out of your mouth is a meaningless waste of breath and airborne toxic event." Because it's like you said, it really puts into perspective, like, how do you watch that scene and not ask yourself, how the fuck is he getting away with saying shit like this? Because he's literally talking to a student. Like in these days, I feel like a student be so quick to like tell their parents, and their parents come to the principal's office like, "I will make you lose your entire job if you talk to my kid like that again." You know what I mean? Like, so it's just Principal Snidey and his level of audacity, I think. Just really impresses me sometimes, because I'm just like, how are you out here doing this? How do you have a job?
he gets away with it some way or another. Nobody's going to
Obviously.
step to him because he's a principal, I guess. For my Shining Slayer, I put, I guess, Buffy for no duh reasons, because obviously she's out here doing Slayer life and taking out one of the Order's assassins alongside Angel and, like, keeping her head afloat. But I will honestly do my big Shining Slayer at the end of part 2.
Yeah, I think I went with Angel just because it stood out really clearly in the scene where Buffy was about to have kind of her ass seemingly handed to her. And I think it was just out of the sincere principle of her being caught off guard so sincerely, being in that ice skating rink, only anticipating probably Angel's arrival, if anybody's, and kind of being in her own element for the first time and enjoy herself and not have like this heavy burden of responsibility or Slayer duty or whatever. Like, it was a nice moment that was so shockingly interrupted by her getting attacked. So I feel like my Shining Slayer has to go to Angel, because I think that as resourceful as Buffy is, when she's blindsided like that is when she's at her most like weak state and like unable to potentially perform at the normal fighting level we're used to seeing her in.
Yeah.
And you kind of saw her started to get the downside of that situation. I feel like I don't know. It could have been a close call with
Yeah.
that one. So I think he kind of saved her out. It was a dual effort.
Weekly wigs.
I think mine's obvious. I don't know what yours is, but mine definitely has to go out to the Bug Man, because, like I said, him and his, I guess, fake form as his human form is creepy, because I wouldn't let him in my house, like I said. It would just, he's giving pedophile vibes almost. And secondly, him and his real form as the bugs, I'm just like, no, like you said, it's the worst worm that you could choose out of the group of worms that there are. So I'm like, nah, you just give me the weekly wigs.
For this episode specifically, because there's more to come from Bugman next episode, Spike's treatment of
Right.
Dalton was my weekly wigs, because clearly Dalton, like I said, was a pushover in his past life, aka his human life. And he's like getting
Yes.
slapped the fuck around by Spike all episode. And I was like, I get you guys are evil, but if I were Dalton, I would just dip, go off the land, move to a new town, like leave this group behind that obviously is hating on my efforts for evil helping. Like, you know what I mean? He's
He
trying to
can do
do
no
the best
right.
of what he's trying to do. He's trying to decipher this stuff, but he's just a little bitch. So he's getting little bitch energy, and Spike's jacking his ass up. And I just didn't like the way Spike was treating him in the episode, which I really don't have sympathy for a vampire, but I was just like, it's like, Spike, just, I don't know, be a little nicer to your lackeys, and maybe they'll actually want to like really do this work for you. But he's got to add that pressure because he's
Totally
really intensely like trying to get Drusilla better.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, obviously no Slayer at predictions this week because you've already seen the next episode. I should ask you, what do you think happens in the next episode? And then you just name out everything.
Everyone dies.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I hate to leave you guys on a cliffhanger, but it must be done. Either way, what did you guys think of the second Slayer reveal? Were you like, yeah, right? Or did the pieces come together quick in your head and you were like, oh, yeah, wait a minute? Do you remember your first time also watching this one? Let us know, and also send in any thoughts on part 1 or 2 this week, and we can include them for next week's recording. Until then, we will catch you guys back here in Sunnydale for What's My Line Part 2.
Dun dun dun.
What if it wasn't? This could be very serious. I mean, if you'd made an effort to be more thorough in your observations.
If you don't like the way I'm doing my job, why don't you find somebody else? Oh, that's right. There can only be one. As long as I'm alive, there is no one else. Well, there you go. I don't have to be the Slayer. I could be dead.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release.
And if you happen to love abandoned places but prefer them vampire-free, check out Echoes of Elsewhere, an urban exploration podcast, where I interview urban explorers about the eerie spaces they uncover, anything from haunted schools, forgotten mansions, and tunnels that probably don't lead to the Hellmouth. From history to mysteries, tips and tricks of the trade, I dive into all things urbex. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.